Welcome back to the Fit Soul podcast or the YouTube. I'm so excited. I have a guest today, and you guys, her story is so incredible. Katie Ginn, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, before we get started, I want to read this bio. Katie Ginn is publisher and editor of the Mississippi Christian Living magazine. And she says that God graciously dropped this into her lap in the fall of 2018 as the fulfillment of a decade-long dream with a mission of pointing people to Christ and making their lives better. In 2024, Katie launched the Oh My Word podcast, Oh My Word with Katie podcast, which she uses to share stories of real life Christianity, the good, the bad, and the Oh My Word, so listeners can find their joy in their own walk with Christ. She is an Arkansas native and she's been in Mississippi since 2007, a graduate of the University of Mississippi, married to Stephen, and they live up in the Gluckstadt area. For those of you not familiar with our area, that's kind of north of where we live in the same area. There he is. So excited to have you here, my friend. Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, I would love for you to tell our listeners a little bit more about just the heart and the mission behind Mississippi Christian Living magazine. Also, just the mission of your podcast and what is it that you're really wanting to do with your voice?
Mm. Yeah. Well, this is, as of this recording, the latest issue of MCL. So this is what it looks like. Y'all can find it if you're in the Jackson metro area at Primo's, Nuke's, Broad Street Bakery, all those places. And when I took over the magazine in 2018, I kind of had to think about what the mission would be. What is the mission statement? What's the vision? And the scripture that kept popping up in my head was 1 Peter 2:9, which says that you would show forth the praises of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. And I love that phrase, show forth the praises. It just gets me really excited and pumped up because I just love showing God's glory. And I feel like that's what we do with the magazine. The people who I had to do this today actually. When I contact someone and say, hey, will you be my cover story? And they're like, I just don't like the spotlight to be on me. And I'm like, that's why I want you, because I don't want it to be about you. I want it to be about God's glory. So we love to do that. With the podcast, my mission there is I'm still figuring it out. It's ever evolving, but I want to make it joyful because the Christian life should be joyful. I don't want to hide from the real issues, the real stuff people deal with, but I want it to be joyful and I also want it to be practical. I love asking people, what do you feel like your calling is and what actually helps you live that out day to day? Because I feel like that's a question I ask myself every day is like, what am I supposed to be doing today? What am I supposed to be doing next? Like, what's my priority today, God? How do I actually do this? Because we can talk up here in the spiritual all day long, but like, how do I actually put this out with excellence? So that's kind of me and my stuff in a nutshell.
Yes, yes, yes. I have a cousin, she's a Christian counselor, and she says often, she's like, make much of Jesus, to make much of Jesus, to make much of Jesus. And that's what I'm hearing and what you're saying is to shine the light and use your voice. And I just love the heart and the mission behind what you're doing. I think it's so needed. I think it's so necessary. And let me ask you this. When God's calling you to this magazine and it's all of a sudden becoming yours and starting a podcast and just, really you're putting yourself out there. And there's always this fear when you start to put yourself out there. Did you have anything that like us, like stinking thinking or some things, fear, self-doubt, insecurity creeping in that were like, yeah, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, who do you think you are to do something like that? Did you have any of those negative thoughts that you had to really fight or overcome?
Yeah, so for me, fortunately, I had a very supportive family. My dad actually bought the business for me. So obviously he really believes in me, which was a big boost. And so I've always felt fairly confident in my abilities, which sounds kind of crass, but it wasn't so much that as like I also have a little bit of mild OCD that I deal with. So I love to overthink things, especially when those things are very important and have to do with my mission, my calling, or above all, my relationship with God. And so when I was, getting ready to take over this publication and it was in the works, but I was still working at my previous job, I was out running an errand or something and I just start ruminating and churning and I have this knot in my stomach like, God, is this really what you want me to be doing? Is this really it? Is this really the next step? And like we're having the papers drawn up and everything, like it's happening. And I'm just, ooh, in that tension. And I had to text my boss at the time who knew nothing about this and say, hey, I need a mental health day. And thankfully, he's a believer himself and very kind and compassionate and just said, yeah, sure, that's fine. So I had to deal with that and get past it. And then, after taking over, it's a huge learning curve. And I definitely made a lot of mistakes and learned from them. But I think that helped me to realize that, okay, you're not going to do it all perfectly and the world's not going to end. So then, like last year, when I had the goal of starting something new, starting a podcast, I didn't have as much anxiety. I was a little better able to be like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this because I've been thinking about it for a year or two. And if I keep delaying, I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I don't have to have the branding perfect yet. I don't have to add video yet. I can just, let's just do it, start doing it. So some of it is just diving in.
I love that. I love that. I'm a messy starter. I just take messy action. Like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Let's go. Let's go. We got this. And I'm so impressed by you. Number one, your confidence. You're like, well, I'm not trying to sound crass. No, you're just confident. You're confident in your abilities, and you have the support of your family. That's incredible. What a gift and what a blessing, and how well you're stewarding that as well. So I just wanted to honor you in that, and also that you just do the thing. There's a risk involved with both of these things that you're talking about, but your heart and your mission is pure, and is to again show forth God's praises, and to point people back to Him. So
Mhm.
amazing! I love this. I love it. I think it's so inspiring. Let me ask you this. My mission is about using my voice to help women walk worthy of their calling. When you think about walking worthy of your calling, what does that mean to you?
Mm. Well, the default for me and my personality is when I hear that phrase, I think doing it with excellence and spending your time wisely, prioritizing the things that will help you walk worthy and do the best you can do. Like, let's not mess around. Like, we have an excellent calling from an excellent God. So let's do our work with excellence. The flip side of that and of my moral OCD sometimes is I can get so focused on doing it with excellence or being theologically correct that I fail to also love people well and love the Lord. And so I just have to watch myself. I have to watch myself on that. And there have been some humbling moments in this business where I've been called out on it, and I've been asked, Katie, do you want to be right or do you want to be like Jesus? And it's just like, ew. And your default is like, well, those are the same thing because Jesus was always right, right? But the Pharisees were very focused on being right, and in the end, they were not right and they were not like Jesus. But if you aim to be like Jesus, you're probably going to get both. You're going to be like him and you're going to be right. So.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you this. One of the things that I find that ambitious women struggle with, and you're clearly ambitious, and so am I. And it's this place that I struggle a lot with, but is going for the mission. My heart's pure why I'm starting. And then somewhere along the way, in that pursuit of excellence, call it what you want to call it, self reliance takes over. And there's this hustle, there's a striving, there's like, and forgetting that, hey, wait a minute, I'm partnered with God. He does the heavy lifting. I've got to, just, I can actually operate at a different capacity. Do you struggle with that place of self-reliance versus, okay, let me surrender back to the spirit.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't have a ton of the hustle culture in me, thankfully, but it's more so like, what does it say about me if I fail? What does it say about me if I do this wrong? Like, is my value found in my work performance and doing all the things correctly and having the right team in place and all of that, or is my value found in Christ? So that's what I've had to struggle with this business, especially in the post-COVID years, up until a couple years ago when it was like, we're losing money more months than we're making money. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know how to find, an awesome ad sales rep who actually lives here in the area and has experience selling print ads and wants to go out and get new business. Like, I don't know how to find that person, all those things. I just had to, as you said, surrender it to the Lord, but repeatedly, over and over again, because it was like, just I'm a failure because the main thing I do on a daily basis is not is losing money, So I've had to deal with some of that.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you this. Writing is what you love. Sharing this love of Jesus is what you love. There's a business side to all these things too, because you're not a 501c3, right? And so it's so interesting. How have you been able to learn what you need to learn to keep it going and to have that long-term vision to grow it into all it can be?
Man, I mean, the long-term vision is still percolating, so TBD, but I remember my first big girl job was at the Northside Sun newspaper, and my coworker, Anthony Warren, shout out to Anthony, I'll have to send him this episode. He was so good at relating to people. He'd call somebody up, and it would be some like, some story about corruption in the city of Jackson, or like something not fun. But he'd be talking to him like, how's your mama and them? And, did your son graduate high school yet? Like this stuff. And he knew all these things about them, and he'd be joking with them, and then he'd get the information. I am not that person. Okay. So having to make sales calls and ask people for money for something that, yeah, as you said, is not a nonprofit, like, oh my word, it was my least favorite thing ever in the history of mankind. So, but I mean, I had to do it. Like, I don't think there was a magic bullet that made me better at it. It's still not my natural gifting, but you know, I did it and I got more comfortable with it. And now my least favorite thing is marketing. So, so the least favorite thing is evolving, and then you do it and you get better at it, or you find the people who are excellent at it and you delegate to them. That's my favorite part.
Right. I love that. I do business coaching and branding coaching. In fact, today I've been on three coaching calls before we got on here, all about the business end and marketing and messaging and getting that heart and soul out so people understand it. It's not easy, especially
Mhm.
when there's so much just white noise, if you will. And so getting that message out is always hard. So, you guys, as you're listening to this, don't worry. I'm going to link up the magazine and her podcast in the show notes. We're definitely going to get you all of those resources. But you said a couple of things that I think are really key. So maybe as you're listening to this, you're like, I don't want to start a magazine and I'm not going to do a podcast. Okay, so what are you doing? And whatever you're going to do, there's always aspects of it that you don't like. And God calls us to things, and then there's going to be other things that are required to move that forward. And that's where you find where's the gap. And you said a couple of things. I don't like doing it, but I had to. You got to do it. You got to go and you got to do things you don't like to do. Just because you don't like to do something and you feel nervous around it is not a stop sign. And Katie, what I find is that a lot of people, feel like that feeling, like truly they get that sense of, oh, but I don't know how to do it. And for them, that's the dead end to that dream, that goal, that even that calling, because they feel that sensation. And the reality is you're running your life on your emotions. and not on the calling, right?
Mm.
Calling and obedience is one thing, and it will always cost you more than you think. It'll always be harder than you ever dreamed or imagined. But obedience is obedience. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, it has been hard, and there are seasons where it's hard and seasons where it flows much better, and months where we're down and months where we're up. But not knowing how to do it should never be a stop sign. Thankfully, when I took over the magazine, there was a team in place with a lot of experience selling ads, and so I probably should have been more intentional in trying to learn from them. But even just being around them and hearing, their feedback on what they had done the previous week and things like that, I started to get a feel for, okay, well, this is kind of what I need to be doing because, there are clients that my team handled and clients that I handled because Marilyn handled them before me. And so I would learn, okay, well, send an email and then that gives you a reason to call later and be like, hey, did you get my email? Just basic stuff. And so, I mean, if you don't know how to do it, find the person who does. If you have access to the internet, you have no excuse not to learn how to do something, you know?
That is right. If you have access to the internet, the reality is that you've got to skill up. Wherever it is, whatever you don't know how to do, you can learn. When I took this sounds so basic, and there was a time in my life where I had a lot of stops because I didn't know how to do something, and I allowed that fear to stop me instead of moving forward. And you're so young to have this and to move forward. I'm so proud of you, by the way. Um, but what I would love for our listeners to hear is that you're called to something, and there is something that only you can do. God's created it for you, and you'll have to skill up along the way and identifying where's the gap, and what skill set do I need to know, and I'm gonna suck real bad at that skill when I get started, and it's gonna feel awkward and it's gonna be hard at first, but the more I do it, the more comfortable I get with it, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll get better and find the right people to help you. Look, Chat GPT is my new person to help me with all this stuff. I forget Google now. I'm like, I put it into chat. I'm like, how do I turn this off on my computer? Like, I don't know how to do all that stuff. And I pull all of that up. But anyway, I love that. So just identifying those skill sets. And it sounds like you've had a lot to learn on both sides of what you're doing.
Yeah, I had a lot to learn. I mean, I had to learn this whole um, recording software for the podcast, and it was so not user friendly. And so, starting off with the podcast, and this is still my system for audio episodes. My dad had an audio interface, this little red box that you plug into the computer. He wasn't using it, so I took it and got a couple of mics. And then it turns out that the recording software that goes with that interface, I had to learn that particular software. I couldn't use Audacity. I couldn't use GarageBand or whatever it was. I have to use Ableton Live Lite 11. And boy howdy, when the how-to tutorial videos are all hosted by European people, they're smarter than us, and it's going to be hard. Like, I had to watch these things over and over. But then after a while, I figured out, okay, here's all my steps. I made myself a cheat sheet, just a Word document. I still open it up to this day before I do an audio only podcast,
Hey
and
guys,
I do my steps.
I want you to see this.
Is
Those
it your cheat sheet?
This is my cheat sheet. Those of you who can't see what I'm pulling up on, I have a sheet. I had actually Daniel Anderson. Shout out to Daniel Anderson and
Audio alchemy.
Audio Alchemy. Yes, yes, yes. He helped me to set up my podcast studio
Mm-hmm.
situation here, and I had to have him back over twice. And I have another one for like I had to write it down. He was like, "Do this," and I'm like, "Wait."
Let me write it down.
Do this. And I literally still pull this out and I keep going, okay, Amy, you're gonna have to struggle through this. It's gonna get easier.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one day you won't even need this and you'll go boop, 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 boop. I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, yeah. But it does get easier. And now, like, I'll go in and edit an audio only podcast on that platform that I have to use because of the thing that I got from my dad. But now it's fun, and I've gotten into a rhythm with it. So yeah, I mean, you just, sometimes you gotta watch a YouTube video, which is like my least favorite way to learn, but I did it.
I want somebody to tell me exactly and to be right here with me. Like, let me watch you. Yeah, the tech piece of what podcasting, and I keep mine so simple. I hear a lot of people that are like, I don't want to start a podcast because I don't know how to do all this. For the longest time, I mean, I for sure, I don't know what episode we're on now, but over 100 episodes, probably 120 episodes. Do you know how I did my podcast? I literally did voice memo and I recorded it right directly to my phone, just like this.
That's so fun.
Microphone, no, nothing. So when people tell me, oh, you got to have all this, I'm like, you don't. You don't. I have a successful podcast. And it was because I did think that the audio's not awesome, and that's okay. I upgraded after a while and made a little investment. And, I'm still figuring out this microphone thing, but yeah, I just love it. It's, again, skilling up. It's that skilling up thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, Katie, so what do you feel like might be your next steps for the next thing, or the kind of maybe the next step to the podcast or to the magazine?
That's a really good question. So I started the podcast last year because I had a goal for 2024 just to start something new, period. And I kind of had a handful of ideas, but I was kind of leaning toward the podcast. And so I knew that was going to be it. And then in the spring of 24 at our scholarship program, I just felt such a strong, strong pull to pour more into that younger generation. And so right now, what I'm trying to do with the podcast is reach like 18-year-old women and reach them at that pivotal age where they're going into college, first time away from home for a lot of them, first time out from under mom and dad's wings and the wings of their home church and everything they've been brought up to believe in their little bubble. And for me, that's when my faith slowly started to become real. And then I reached a crisis point senior year of college where I was like, is this real? Can I believe it? I don't know. And spent my whole senior year of college trying to figure that out. Again, OCD. But I want to be there for them when they hit that point. I want to be there for them when they need a friend or a big sister. And so how I do that might change. It might take different shapes and the podcast might take different shapes, but that's what's on my heart right now is just reaching younger women. I have an intern from last summer who just finished her freshman year of college at Ole Miss. She's about to be on my podcast, and she's just the sweetest person. And I love, reading her blog and keeping in touch with her, and just want to be there for. Her name is Ansley Claire, and I want to be there for all the Ansley Claires. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to do right now.
Love that. What a needed thing too. I
Yeah.
I, I love that a lot. Yeah. Okay, so I do have a question to ask you. On your podcast, oh my word, you asked, which I was on, and my podcast, this podcast may come out before yours. Who knows? Who
Yeah,
knows?
who knows?
It doesn't matter. But Katie asked a question. She asked you to share an oh my word moment. That could be funny, it could be real, it could be wrong, of what reminded you of God in the details. So do you have? And I had to think about that question. I was like, I don't know if this is what you're asking. Mine was long-winded, but do you have an oh my word moment?
Yeah, so there's so many major ones from throughout my life, but if I'm thinking recently, and I probably should do a better job journaling. I'm not as good of a journaler as I used to be, ironically, but I went to a women's retreat a couple of months ago. It was actually my birthday weekend, and it was just a women's retreat at Tanglewood that my church put on. Wonderful time. And they gave us this little booklet, a little guide, little program for the weekend, and it had a little Saturday morning reflection devotional thing. And I didn't read it. Like I started reading it at one point, but I just didn't finish reading it. And I kept it and thought, eventually I'm going to read this devotional. And so then finally I read it last week, like 2 months later. And at the end, it talks a lot about, when your plans go awry, knowing that, our story is for his glory, he's working it all for good, take heart. And actually, when I read that, John 16:33 had been the reading, like the verse of the day that the church had sent out that day, the day I read this devotional that ended in take heart. take heart, for I've overcome the world, is what Jesus says. And at the time I finally read the devotional, 2 months after the women's retreat, was when I really needed to hear that, because I knew I had a certain hope and I didn't know if it was going to happen. And it turns out it didn't happen at that time. And I needed that message. But 2 months earlier at the retreat itself, that's not what I was struggling with. And that message wouldn't have really helped me. It would have just kind of gone in one ear and out the other. So that's not the most dramatic oh my word story ever. There's so many more that have happened in my life, but that, looking through my journal and things I've written down, I was just like, oh, yep, needed that, and the Lord knew it. So
Yeah, God's timing is always so precious.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. So this next question might tie into that one just a little bit, but do you have a truth or a scripture that you're clinging to in this season?
Well, the scripture that jumped out at me recently was actually the story of Caleb in the Old Testament. I was just looking for something to read for my quiet time, and I picked up this book. I don't have it with me, I apologize. It's called Holy Grit by Dean Register, who's a pastor in Hattiesburg. And each chapter is about a different biblical person and how they had holy grit to get through their stuff. Yeah. And the chapter on Caleb, I think it's only like the third chapter, but it's my favorite so far. It's so good. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go back and actually read the passages that have Caleb in them. And the stuff this dude went through, first of all, okay, he's one of the 12 spies. He spies out the land. He and Joshua are the only ones who believe God's promises and say, he's told us he's going to give us this land. Let's go take it. Let's go now. The other 10 are too scared. Everybody else is too scared. And so they all have to wander in the wilderness for 40 years because they didn't have the faith to take the land. And Caleb has to wander in the wilderness too, even though he didn't do anything wrong. Like, he has to do this, and it's not his fault. And so he's 40 when the 40 years starts. So then by the time they get into the land and he's going to claim his part of the land, he's 85. And so he goes to Joshua, who's like divvying up the land, and he actually requests the city of Hebron, which is full of giants, and he and his people clear out the giants when he's 85. Like, can I say that he's a bad ASS? He is like, oh my word. And the thing that stuck out to me, well, there's two things. One is just like the spirit of fear and anxiety and depression that can just come in so quickly just from 10 people, and how I want to be the Caleb and the Joshua in the situation. I want to be the encourager. I want to be the one that says, no, God said we could do this. Like, God told us. I want to be the one that reminds people of the truth. And then the other thing is, like, when we are in a season of waiting and we think we're having to wait so long, like, okay, but are you wandering in the desert for 40 years? Just being willing to trust God, and then at the end of it, still being strong enough to take hold of that promise. So that's just been like kind of percolating in my brain lately, but I had never really done a deep dive on Caleb before, and I'm like, man, I would love to be more like that.
What is the name of that book again? That sounds
Holy Grit by Dean Register, and he's a pastor in Hattiesburg.
okay. Perfect. Holy Grit. I love that. I love that a lot. Katie, thank you so much for being willing to come on this podcast and share your story. I love your heart. I love your mission, and to reach young girls, but also or young ladies, I should say, but also to others for your light. I just want to say that your light is shining bright, and it is refreshing to see someone so confident, but just confident in moving forward in the things that God's called them to do at a young age. So I just want to honor you, girl. You go, girl. You go and celebrate the heck out of you. And I want my listeners to go and connect with you. So can you give us a rundown on how we can, I'll put everything in the show notes, but how we can connect with you?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Those are very kind words. You can find Oh My Word with Katie, the podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. You can just search Oh My Word with Katie and it should come up. It has my face on it. And then, of course, you can follow at Oh My Word Pod on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, you can follow the magazine Mississippi Christian Living on Facebook and Instagram, as well as myself. Don't follow my professional page on Facebook. I never post on that anymore. Just send me a friend request if you want to.
I don't think anybody does. Now, and then as far as a subscription to your magazine, is that available? If they just click on and they can subscribe to it?
Yes, so you can go to mschristianliving.com, scroll to the bottom, and there is a link where you can subscribe. And it's $29 for a year, which is 12 issues delivered to your door.
Incredible. Incredible. Okay. All right. Well, Katie, thank you so much for being here. You guys definitely go and get that magazine in your hands. Go subscribe. Listen, Katie, I can't tell you how many episodes I was in when I started my podcast. I had no idea that you need to subscribe to your own and download your own things.
Uh-huh.
I had no idea. I'm like, oh, you mean I should? I don't even think I still don't think I download my own podcast. But you guys, downloading a podcast is a thing. That's how we're able to track the success, basically, of the podcast. So would you do us a solid, number one, if you enjoyed this content, would you share it with someone? That would mean the world to both of us. Number two, would you put it in your Instagram stories or Facebook stories, and we will both repost you. We would.
Yep, absolutely.
100% do that. And go follow Katie on her Instagram and her Facebook page. Connect with her and support her in her effort. So, Katie, thank you again for being here. All right, you guys, have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back next week. And until then, remember to walk worthy. Okay, bye-bye.